we've got Gil Magen from Accessibility, head of products marketing, and he has over a decade of experience across product marketing, communications, and direct client facing roles. He brings a unique perspective on what drives real business value. His career spans SaaS, digital media, agency leadership, equipping him with the ability to bridge the gap between market needs, product offerings, and lasting customer relationships. And today, as head of product marketing at Accessibility, Gil focuses on connecting the dots between product, market, and customer, helping brands become more inclusive by making their digital assets accessible to everyone. And of course, that is going to be the very topic of our webinar today. And I'm very excited to get into this topic. And I, of course, am Natalie from WiseStamp, as always. And this is WiseTalk, the series of conversations on all things marketing and SaaS. And we are super excited to be delving into this important topic today. So, Gil, let's start off with defining what digital accessibility is.
So that's actually a great question because if when people are asking me what is the number one problem with web accessibility is actually that people are not aware of what is web accessibility because it's not top of mind. So web accessibility is the practice of making your digital asset accessible for everyone, regardless if it's people with or without disabilities. Everyone should have an equal experience when they're navigating through your digital assets. And you, as a brand, you should aim for providing a top-notch experience and allowing people to actually consume the content that is on your website and to get what they came at the first place for your website.
Right. And um, what kind of disabilities should websites be catering to? Because when I was beginning my research, I was just thinking, okay, color contrasts and maybe some blurriness, but there's more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, much more. It's actually a whole world. So when thinking about people with disabilities, and not a lot of people know, but around 16% of the global population are people that are living with some sort of disability. If you look at the US, the numbers go way higher to across to around 26% of the population. And we're talking about people who are blind or have some kind of motor disability. So just a few example. If you're blind, and it might be come to you as a surprise, but people who are blind actually using the internet. Um, and when they're using the internet, most of them will use a technology that's called a screen reader. A screen reader. What a screen reader will do, it will actually read out loud what the content on the website. And if you did not build your website properly, for example, let's take the most basic example. If you uploaded an image to your website and you did not add an alternative text that describes what's on the image, the moment this user will get to the image, the screen reader will say image instead of, if it's an e-commerce website that, I don't know, selling t-shirts, so like a white t-shirt with the text with the following text. So that's one example. Um, Another example that a lot of people are not aware of. So um, people who live with epilepsy, um, it actually can be a life-threatening risk for them if they will get to if they have a blinking like a visible sensitivity. So it can actually trigger a seizure if you have blinking lights on your website, or if you have sudden moves. This can actually trigger a life-threatening seizure for them. So you need to be able to build your website properly in order to allow them, browse the web with ease. And there are other numerous examples of how people with disabilities are, using accessibility functions in order to browse the web.
And what kind of content should be accessible? Is it just your website? Is it just some of your landing pages, maybe? Can you walk us through that?
So I say it as a I'm not saying it in an offensive way, but it's a kind of a funny question, but at the same time I totally get the question because it's sort of like um, what restaurants should be accessible to web people with disabilities? The answer is all website and all digital content whatsoever should be accessible to people with disabilities. It doesn't matter if it's a person with or without disability. Everyone should have the ability to consume the content that on your website or your web app or your application, whatever it may be. It need to be built in a proper way for people with disability to be able to consume the content in an equal way.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it's pretty striking, I guess, that we think about in those terms of like what should I make accessible and what shouldn't be, when really it's part of that greater brand discussion, that attitude that you have towards accessibility. And I'm wondering if you have any insights on what the general attitude is of marketers, product managers, or other professionals out there around this topic of accessibility.
So it's definitely a brand conversation, but it's even a broader conversation. It's at the end of the day, web accessibility is simply a wise business decision to for every business to take, and the numbers are showing that. So just a few numbers. Um, the the population of people with disability and their inner surrounding circles, they have a spending power of more than 13 trillion dollars in spending power. That's a huge segment that you cannot overlook. Researchers are showing that the 71% of people with disability will bounce out of your website if they will encounter web accessibility barriers. Now, again, some people would wrongly say, well, people with disabilities are not consuming our content or not purchasing our product. That's a misconsumption. Again, we're talking about in the US more than 26% of the population, 16% of the global population. It's a huge segment, and if a huge segment is bouncing out of your website, it has other implications such as SEO, for example, that will impact your entire website performance. So at the end of the day, it's a simply wise business decision in all perspective, no matter if you're in what department are you working, whether if it's on the marketing, the sales, the product. At the end of the day, everyone wants to provide a top-notch customer experience.
Yeah, certainly. And I want to kind of bring this towards the brand question. Let me just share. This is actually a slide from Accessibility. Let me move my camera over to here. I have a couple different screens going. Um, we can see that for Gen Zers, having this reputation of being socially responsible, especially when it comes to accessibility, it really affects their decision making process, and it affects millennials as well. So we've got 94% of Gen Zers that it affects their decision making process when they see that a company is socially responsible. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's,
Because oh, sorry.
yeah. No, please go ahead.
Because at the end of the day, when looking at Gen Z, they're not just buying, the end product. They're buying an experience, or they purchase a certain shoe because this shoe says something about them as an individual. And this is why more and more customers, during their due diligence on the brand before actually purchasing, a certain product, because it's something that reflects on their persona. So it makes total sense that they will look at the brand, they will understand the brand, and if they would understand that the brand is not inclusive, they don't want to be portrayed as a non-inclusive person.
Right. And so along those lines, if you were like building a brand from scratch today, um, how early would you bring accessibility into that conversation and why?
It's a great question, and we need to understand that web accessibility is a journey, right? It's not a checkbox that you one day decide that, yeah, I want to this is something that I want to tackle, and that's it. And um, it's also, not all brands are equal. So obviously we have, enterprises that have certain resources, and we have moms and pops who have different resources. But I would say that start your accessibility journey as early as possible. And unlike a lot of people think, web accessibility shouldn't be so intimidating. Today, when we have AI and other, machine learnings and other advanced technology, it doesn't have to be such a complicated thing to do. Technology can do most of the heavy lifting for you, and it's not a yes or no question. It's a when question, and simply start your journey, and your journey should start with understanding whether your website is accessible or not, because a lot of people simply don't understand, because web accessibility ironically wasn't accessible for most businesses up until a few years ago, when you had to allocate massive development resources in order to make your website accessible. And today, thanks to technology, no matter if you're using a drag and drop website builder, or you're building your website with developers, there are tools that can do most of the heavy lifting for you and support your journey, whether if you want you want an AI solution that will support you, or if you want a solution that will help you developers making a website accessible. So it's a long answer to a short question, and but the bottom line is, start your web accessibility journey as soon as possible.
Um, yeah, that's really important advice. And maybe you could list out some common pitfalls or mistakes that one could avoid when trying to make their brand more accessible.
Yeah, so um, people think that web accessibility equals, building your website in a boring way. It
Or
doesn't,
your
it
color
doesn't.
palette, your logo. This is
Yeah.
a concern that
Mhm.
marketers have.
And it makes sense. We're specifically with today's discussion, where we're talking about the impact of web accessibility on brand. A lot of people are, they're working so hard to make their brand to stand out and make it unique, and then they say, well, what's the point? So there are solutions, such as, don't want to make it too salesy, but for example, with our flagship product Access Widget, it's a widget that sits on your website and allows people with disability to customize their own experience on your website. So if a person doesn't want to use the widget, it doesn't impact on your brand whatsoever. So a person who would require, the accessibility adjustment could activate the widget, and it will make the website much more accessible for this specific individual. Um, another common mistake is to think that web accessibility is just for people with disabilities, right? So I'll take a very popular example, and that's captions. Okay, so captions, for example, think about yourself. Even you're a person without disability, if you're on commute and you want to watch a specific video, if it will not have captions, you will scroll to the next video. bam, you lost your opportunity as a brand to stand out. So these are just, just as top of mind two examples of misconceptions of people when they think about web accessibility.
That's those are very important points, and especially with the video captions, because that's something that has become so ubiquitous. And I remember when that first became a thing, um, I thought that was odd. Like, why would you want to distract from your video and have people reading instead of listening and watching the actual video? And now I couldn't imagine putting out content or seeing content, especially on social media with shorts and stuff like that, without the captions, because it just adds value to the content.
For sure, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but the amount of people that are watching videos on silence, I'm pretty sure it's even higher than people that are actually watching the video with sound. So when making your website accessible, it's for the benefit of of everyone. It's not just for people with disabilities. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I want to get into some more of like the practical tips and applications of accessibility in a moment. I want to first of all give a special offer to everyone who's made it today as a token of appreciation. So, WiseStamp, as you guys know, is the leading enterprise email signature management platform, and we are offering you guys a discount. This is for new customers only for your email signature management needs. So for up to 200 seats, you'll get 15% off. For over 200 seats, you'll get 20% off with discount code YSTAMP4, one word. And this is going on until Thursday, May 15th, which is actually Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So this is wonderful that we're having this conversation around this time period when hopefully will help to raise awareness with whatever content comes out of this. So very pleased. And we've got some emojis going. Yeah. Thanks for liven up the conversation here. I want to step in quickly to a pretty important topic within accessibility and the business impact of it. And that's the legal standpoint. So, obviously, the US, there's a lot of crackdown. Europe has its laws as well. So, what do enterprise leaders need to understand about the legal risks of not being digitally accessible today?
So even though when people are asking me about web accessibility, I always say that yeah, it is the law, but at the end of the day, it's simply the right thing to do. But when looking about, when looking on litigation stats, so in the US, in the past 6 years, litigation went uh, there was a rise of 75% from 2018 to 2024. And it's simply because more people understand the importance of web accessibility. Governments understand the importance of equality and holding enterprises as accountable for making their website accessible and making sure they provide an equal experience for all users, whether they're with or without disabilities. We're seeing it's not just about the penalties, that brands are getting. It's about the brand reputation impact. You don't want to be this brand who is involved in a lawsuit saying that the person with disability tried to consume the content on your website. It simply doesn't worth it. Um, we're seeing some um, pretty stunning numbers, specifically on a few industries. So last year, 70% of lawsuits in the US targeted retail and e-commerce industries. We're seeing not as much, not as high numbers, but other industries that are very much targeted, like the food and travel, education, and government industries. These are industries that attorneys are actually targeting. And also, there's another trend that we are saying it's an unfortunate trend, but it is a trend that is taking place, that law firms are, they recognize the the I would say the opportunity with the ADA, the American Disability Act, and they actually turn it into a business practice. What is it? What it means is that they will hire, an intern who will send thousands of demand letters, even without, even without looking at your website, saying, "Hey, your website is not accessible. If you will not respond in the next few days, we will proceed into litigation." I talked about the rise in litigation, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, because most lawsuits are being settled before before they're coming to court. and and what's absurd is that we're seeing in the numbers that more than 50% of companies that have been targeted will be retargeted with another lawsuit, because brands simply settle because they don't want to get into litigation, and then they're simply being targeted again and again. So as a brand decision, you don't want to get into this position. And when you see the trade-off, and you understand that web accessibility is no longer that intimidating, you should start your, as I said, start your accessibility journey today. You can, we at Accessibility offer a free tool to scan your website and get an immediate response, whether your web accessibility status. So that's the first step. Simply check your website, and start your journey from that point, and decide how deep do you want to get in the process, and it doesn't have to be that daunting.
Yeah, and here's the QR code. You all can take a moment and scan it, and um, you'll be prompted to add in the URL of your website, and you can automatically get a report of the initial status of your website and start getting that into the consciousness of your marketing team, of your product team, or whoever, whatever stakeholders here are most relevant. And it's it's like Gil is saying, it's not necessarily even from a legal decision, or yes, sales is an important aspect to this as well, the business aspect. But in general, accessibility standards, when you're improving your accessibility, you're actually just improving the overall experience of your website or your product. So this is definitely something that you want to um, get into the groove with. And for sure, if you're here right now and you're listening to this conversation, then you're already on board. So that's wonderful. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
I will add because we talked about heavily about the US, and Europe is actually closing the gap, and in June this year, regulation will kick in and will demand brands to make their digital assets accessible as well. And I see the litigation or the regulation in Europe, much like if we can think about another example that we had is the GDPR. All right, so we knew GDPR is coming. It was this big bad wolf that is coming around the corner, and no one knew how to tackle it. And then there was sort of like a panic of, oh my God, how do I start this journey? So again, it doesn't have to be such a scary journey. And there, companies today, I can talk about accessibility, but we know how to tailor our solutions to the specific needs of the customer. So again, if you're a big brand, if you're an enterprise, we can offer you this solution that you will take with your developers who will expedite their work and make it much more efficient. Because at the end of the day, we understand that enterprise and other brands, they want to focus on their core business, and that's okay. So what we're trying to do is do the heavy lifting for them and to allow them to focus on their core doing. And the same thing for a small brand. A lot of small brands or startups thinks, what's the point? Like, I don't have the resources, so why even look into it? So again, it's not a question of zero or one or yes or no. It's a question of when, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. It can actually be pretty simple.
Well said. And I want to actually do another quick screen share because I want to get into some of the more practical tips. We're talking about not being afraid. I want to show this cool technique that I just learned about in my research for today. And we're going to actually walk through and see how Amazon will look like for someone who has some vision impairment. So I'm clicking the menu button in the top right, and I'm actually going to, I'm forgetting, shoots. Oh, crikey. I forget where, oh, sorry. No, I'm going to go to inspect. Then I'm going to click this, the menu button at the top right. Then I'm hitting more tools and I'm going to rendering. And then here at the bottom, I'm scrolling down all the way to emulate vision deficiencies. And it has sort of a intro look. It gives you this intro experience to what it's like to be seeing and experiencing online content with different vision deficiencies. So we have no red, we have no green. And you can imagine how, especially a branding expert, might want to be aware of, how much does your brand stand out? How much does your social content stand out if you can't solely rely on your color palette and some of your visuals? So that's an interesting thing to maybe keep in mind as we walk into some of the more practical tips. So, what can you share with us, Gail, for some practical, first off things of what our audience can do right now to improve the accessibility or check out the accessibility of their website?
So beside obviously, understanding your web accessibility or choosing, a web accessibility vendor that will help you in the process, there are a few, things that you can actually take on your own in order to make your website much more accessible. So we started with the alt text, the alternative text. Um, it's a pretty straightforward practice. Whenever you upload a picture to an image to your website, make sure you add an alt text to it. The alt text doesn't have to be too complicated. You just want to, if you had to describe to a friend of yours what's on the image that he or she will get the context, that should be the alternative text. And most CMSs, if your website is not hard coded, most CMSs offer the ability to add alternative text. Unfortunately, most website owners or website managers simply do not do it, and they will up. We all know it. You upload an image, and the image has a name of 123 ABC, something or something without any context. So that's a very forward example. Another thing is making sure that you label buttons in a way that actually will help people understand what will happen when they will once they will click the button. Is to we all know about the learn more. It's the most generic CTA in the world. So you need to provide a better context, and it will again not just for people with disabilities. It's for everyone. It will provide a much better context for everyone to understand what will happen once. Why should I even click the button? Um, um, Another example is what you mentioned with the contrast. And again, not just for people with disabilities, it's for everyone. Or even if you think about, elderlies, they need to consume the content in a specific way. So if you'll put green font on a blue background, it obviously it will the contrast will make it harder for everyone. And it's not just a matter of design. It's something that will at the end of the day will impact your bottom line. It will impact your performance. It will impact your SEO. It impacts your business. So these are a few more examples. And another thing that I want to share is that um, a lot of people, you asked me about what kind of assets should be accessible. So a common mistake is to think that if that you know platforms such as Adobe, that you create a PDF, it automatically make it accessible. Or if you upload a Word document, it automatically, again, not the case. They do offer you best practices on how to make your document accessible, but if you won't do it, your document won't be accessible, and then the text won't be readable. So there are services. We obviously offer one to make your files accessible to everyone. It's specifically relevant, for the education industry, when you need to fill out lots of forms. So it's also important to make sure that also collaterals that you have on your website are accessible as well.
Right. And how about emails? Because this is something that obviously a touch point that people have on a daily basis, several times a day, with prospects, potential partners. How relevant are those to this conversation, and what can people do to ensure that their emails are also accessible?
So that's a great example. So if you I'll take for example, we're using at Accessibility, we're using HubSpot for our mailing activities. So HubSpot as well, they are offering all kind of features. I just talked about the alt text. So if you upload a banner to your email that with a big headline, you should have the alt text. If you have all kind of buttons on your emails with the CTA, you should also look at with the how to make them accessible. And you can also you can either be an autodidact and learn how to do it yourself, or you can tons of companies offering also like training on how to make your emails accessible. Just get the best practices, and then once you educate it enough, you can do it on your own.
Right. So back to like where should accessibility come into the conversation of building up your brand. So even as you're choosing, let's say, your website builder, let's say you want to make sure that there's an easy area to add in those alt text, for example. If you're choosing a some sort of customer support uh, platform as well. You want to be sure that there's accessibility involved when you're choosing your marketing platforms. You want to make sure that that's part of what they offer and that they can hopefully promise that in some way, or cater to that in some way. And actually, with YStamp as well, I want to just show some of our fun email signatures here. And it's always hard to transfer while I'm talking. I always have to pause. Okay. And with YStamp as well, that some customers they get annoyed because they don't want to be limited to a certain amount of fonts that they use that maybe it's not perfectly on brand. But actually, we stick to certain fonts and we have our templates set up in a certain way that they are responsive across all mobile devices. And that's an important aspect of accessibility as well. We make sure that there's no broken links and images because you can control from one template and it's actually applied organization wide. So you just make one change, you upload one social media link, and all of the social media links in for all of your employees are automatically updated as well. So these are kind of foolproof ways to make sure that even your email signatures are both on brand and also keep up with your company values of the accessibility standards. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Yeah, these are important points that you're bringing up. Okay. And so, how do you know when you're doing accessibility right? Is there a point where you can kind of feel confident as a marketer? Okay, I've checked off those boxes.
So again, it's it web accessibility. So I didn't mention web accessibility. So there's all right. Let's differentiate between two important things. So there is the regulation. For example, in the US there is the ADA, and in Europe we will have the EAA. This is the regulation, and there is the technical standard that most regulation referring to, which is the WCAG. The WCAG is a very long guideline that guides you how to, what's the best practices in order to make your website accessible. And I do admit it's a pretty long guide that it's pretty intimidating. So this is where experts come in place and do the heavy lifting for you. They have tons of years with experience, and they can do the work for you. Now, you as a brand, you can decide what you want to do. You wanna take a training session and to guide your team with the best practice and decide, hey, web accessibility is a journey. I'm gonna take 2 steps, or all right, I'm an enterprise. I cannot afford even a single person with disability to come in with to my digital asset and to come across accessibility barriers. So I will bring in some experts who will make sure that my website accessible. And it's important to understand that web accessibility it's not something that, all right, let's start a project, make our website accessible, and that's it. It's an ongoing effort, because your website is a living creature, and you need to make sure that you're monitoring your website, and with every change that you're doing on your website, you need to make sure that your website is accessible. So it really depends on your resources, and you as brand can decide whether you wanna take some training and do some kind of work. You wanna choose an automated solution who will work day and night for you, and will make your website much more accessible, or you wanna I don't know, purchase an accessibility platform for developers who will, they will make sure that your website is accessible in the code, or you can have even a company who will, make sure that your website accessible on the code level, and it's a part of service that they're offering.
Um,
I
yeah,
do I
this
do
is
want to something that I didn't mention. It's very important, and that we highly encourage is, if you can, it's highly recommended to involve people with disabilities in the process. Have people with disabilities to review your website, to share their experience, and if possible, even make them part of the process when you're building a new product. Have them, make sure that they have a seat at the table, and hear their voice. What are they're saying about the experience? How do they would like to consume the content that will not only make the room uh, much richer with more perspective. At the end of the day, it will make your brand better.
That is so spot on with what I was actually about to say, that this whole lead up to this conversation today made me realize like I want to go through our website with some sort of um, like reader and see how it adds adds up to that and how it's doing. But yeah, it would be best to just kind of loop in someone who has some sort of accessibility difficulty and see what they think.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
love
And
that.
and again, in most cases, um, most it's unfortunate, but most websites out there are not are not accessible. But it doesn't mean that it's okay. It's actually very wrong, and here's where regulation kicks in order to actually change this unfortunate status.
Why do you think that today, where especially millennials and Gen Zers are so they're so focused on the social responsibility aspect, and yet you still see websites even from last year that are coming that are going live and are still not accessible? Why do you think that is?
Because it's listen, it's not it brings me back to the beginning of the conversation, that the number one problem about web accessibility is that people are not aware of web accessibility. It's not top of mind. I didn't meet any person who woke up and say, hey, let's make our website not accessible for people with disabilities. It's not the case. It's simply, you're as a brand, you move fast. You think about, the bottom line. You think about paying salaries, answering to the board, and all of these concerns, and you forget that there's a very common, very important practice of making sure that your digital doors are open. It's almost like, if we'll use an analogy of a brick and mortar store, it's having someone with a dollar bill outside your store saying, hey, I wanna purchase your product. I just simply can't get in. It's obviously, as a store owner, what you would do if you would see a prospect outside your store, you would open the door, and this is what you need to do. You simply, maybe you didn't see it, and this is why you didn't open the door. So this is why I urge everyone to, you know, open your eyes, open the door, and let everyone in, because everyone will benefit from it.
And so let's say someone is trying to introduce accessibility into a company that's, 100 to 200 employees already,
Mhm.
and you've got a lot of moving parts, and you've got an international team where you've got the customer support folks that have maybe certain assets that they send to customers, or they have certain decks for presentations. Then you've got the sales folks that have their one pagers that they send out that maybe they make through um, StoryDoc. Just a shout out to our friends over at StoryDoc. So, what is a way that a marketing leader or a decision maker in that kind of position can start improving the accessibility? Because it can't be an all or nothing. It's not, as we've said a couple times, it's not just like a couple of set check boxes that you check off and you're done. So it's a moving process. So how can maybe a decision maker in that kind of position start implementing and improving the accessibility of all their company assets?
So once you understand, again, going back to, basic, understand your web accessibility. Once you understand your web accessibility status, then you need to take a decision. How do you wanna go about web accessibility, and how much resources you want or can allocate towards web accessibility. If possible, and you can allocate, dev resources um to, to this ongoing initiative, do that. Um, it doesn't have to be, too time consuming. There are platforms such as our Xflow, that basically is sort of like a dashboard that um, you implement in order to review your website. It will do the heavy lifting by categorizing the issue, showing the severity of the problem, and even come up with suggestion of how to make your code accessible with a copy paste. And if you can, great. Do that, and then it continue to audit your website. And with every change, it will alert you if there are issues. If you cannot allocate dev resources, definitely there are other solutions who will automate the process for you, will create sort of like a layer on top of your website to offer end user to customize their own experience according to their disability. Um, and at the end, and the third layer is what we talked about, the media files, or the documents. And then simply, if you're a company of 100 to 200, I would definitely recommend. Obviously, I'm biased, but at the end of the day, I think it's a necessity. Go out, find your accessibility vendor that can provide, and be your accessibility partner, and really have them customize their offering in according to your ability and your needs, to make sure that your digital assets are accessible.
Perfect. And so you've been in the accessibility space for a few years. Do you see some changes? Do you see that this world is improving? Do you see that there's more acknowledgement of the importance of accessibility?
Yeah, for sure. So I can tell you that, and we're seeing it, in demo calls. If back in the day, so I'm working in accessibility more than 4 years already. And if at the beginning, most of our conversation were, hey, we were targeted by an attorney, we got a demand letter, a friend of mine got a lawsuit. That the trend is changing. We are hearing more and more about the understanding of brands, that they simply want to make sure that they're an inclusive brand, and they want to make sure that everyone are are um, are accessible. And from their questions, we also understand that brands are becoming much more educated about the way that they want to go about web accessibility. If they're saying, yeah, I want to go about it on the source code. I want an automated solution that will automate most of the process for me. So we definitely see and it's a very positive trend to see that people are becoming more and more familiar with web accessibility. It's also a result of a mixed effort of regulation and the accessibility industry that are working very, very hard. I can tell you that we are allocating massive resources into raising awareness, not just not for our brand, for web accessibility as a whole, and about the importance of web accessibility. We are actually collaborating with more than 600 nonprofits, disability-oriented nonprofits, and spotlighting their efforts without talking about brand, without our brand. And it's about spotlighting their community, their challenges, and the opportunities that by that will that brands will unlock once they will open their digital worlds for these communities. So yes, we're definitely seeing a trend in awareness.
And it's interesting because you see that as well in just in the simple level of Google and Google updates and how accessibility is taking more of like a primary role in affecting website traffic. So I wonder if there's something you could share there because that's something that a lot of our crowd is concerned about is their SEO.
Yeah, of course. Um, I can actually share some insights from a research that I'm sure people that are working on SEO are familiar with SEMrush. So SEMrush actually, examined close to 900 different domains before they made their website accessible and after they made their website accessible. More than 70% of these websites saw an um, an uptick in traffic once they made their website accessible, and more than 66% of these websites actually saw a rise of more than 50% in their organic traffic. And it sounds imaginary, but if you think about it and how web accessibility can impact your bottom line, it actually makes sense. Because if we talked about these 71% of people with disabilities, they are bouncing out of your website, it it impacts your user experience. And if Google understand that if he sends traffic to your website and people are bouncing out, he will bring another, they will pop another result that with the hope to provide a better experience. Same thing for conversions. We know that web accessibility is good for conversion. So if your website is not accessible and there's your conversion rate is not great, again, something that can impact your SEO. Dwell time. Obviously, a website that is more accessible and people can skip between one page to the other and actually consume all the entire content. Another example that impacts your SEO: alternative text. Another, it's not just for SEO. If you're actually adding alt text, it impacts your SEO because Google can actually crawl your website and understand the context of your goods that you're offering on your website. So web accessibility and SEO are going hand in hand together, definitely.
And I would say, just going back to the email world, since we're in email signature, and somebody asked about emails being accessible, we did discuss that, and emails definitely should be accessible, whether it's um, plain text emails, of course, but then if you've got those lovely newsletters with the branded banners at the top and everything's clickable, then definitely you need to make sure that you have those web safe fonts and that you have responsive design and the color contrasts and all that. Uh, so that also would affect your email reputation as well. Similarly, um, if if people are not responding to your emails, they're associating emails from your brand as being difficult to use or inaccessible, then they're going to not open your emails anymore. And that's not great for your email reputation. And they will prioritize those emails from companies that do prioritize that. So it's sort of a win-win, I guess, all around.
For sure, couldn't agree more.
Amazing. So, thank you so much, Gail, for taking the time to speak with us today, and really looking forward to um, being able to take a more of a proactive role for um, the conversation around accessibility and Global Accessibility Awareness Day that's coming up. I'm sure that you guys are planning important things to bring awareness around that as well. And where can people find you?
Um, Me personally, or accessibility.
Both?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy, to reply and bounce some ideas of how you can make your website much more inclusive. And if you'd like to start your accessibility journey, simply hop to accessibe.com. It's ACCESSIBE.com, and you can either scan your website and understand your accessibility status, or simply use the to chat to have one of our reps help you understand what's the best way for your brand to start your accessibility journey.
Amazing. So thank you everyone for attending and just by being here and wanting to learn more about accessibility. This is helping to drive awareness about around this important topic. So hats off to you guys as well. And of course, please watch out for our upcoming webinar in May on email security. So date and time that's going to be announced shortly. And we'll be sharing the link on our LinkedIn page as usual. And be sure to follow us as well. Look out for the link to this webinar that we're going to send over to you guys. And thank you so much, Gil. Again, it's been wonderful learning more about accessibility, that it's not just website, it's email, it's sales content, it's all of the touch points that you have with prospects, potential partners, and with everyone out there. And you want to make sure that your door is open to everyone. So thank you so much, and definitely see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was very fun.
My pleasure. See ya.